Hey, good morning, Mr. Hannan. Thank you so much for making me think about this in a different way. I appreciate it. I think spending our way out of this is not sustainable over the long haul. There's certain bubbles that I've been a part of, the tech bubble, the housing bubble, and now I see a government bubble. And I think when this bursts, and I think this will burst, I think two things will happen. Either there will be revolt or, God forbid, war. In your estimation, and with what happened in 1933, a world war ensued 5 years, 10 years from that date. I mean, do you see this heading in that path? Thank you.
I mean, that would be pretty much at the outer edge of the spectrum as a worst-case scenario. I mean, it is true that in the 1920s there was the same kind of consensus for free trade and laissez-faire economics that there was until this crash. And very quickly that turned into protectionism, and protectionism then created its momentum towards national rivalries and eventually to the tragedy of the war, because countries that buy and sell a lot to each other generally are less likely to fight each other. What I think is maybe more likely, my more central prediction, is nothing as dramatic as a breakdown of the Comity of Nations. Simply that we just become drabber and poorer and more indebted. After the last crash, we reacted more or less as we've reacted to this one. More spending, more state intervention, Keynesianism, counter-cyclical spending, fiscal stimulus, all the works. And we saw where that led. It led, in the end, to indebtedness and inflation and stagnation and utter political and literal bankruptcy by the end of the 70s. And that was the circumstance, to go back to the previous questioner, in which Reagan took over in your country and Margaret Thatcher took over in mine. It was after the total visible failure of the previous consensus that the government should direct the economy. Now, what I'm terrified of is that we're going to go through that whole cycle again, and our generation is going to have to learn the same lessons that our fathers did before we come back out of it and realize that we're generally better guardians of our own resources than state bureaucracies are.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Oxford.
Shreveport, Louisiana is next. Good morning.
What an honor, sir, to talk to you, sir. What an honor. 2 points.
A fantastic question. Let's call it quits there.
Okay. No, it is, because I've been keeping up with you, sir. My first point, health care. You tell these people out here like it is. Just tell what you have been putting on the airways. Number 2.
Caller, stay on the line. We'll get health care. We'll come back with your follow-up. Mr. Hannan.
Okay. We have in the United Kingdom basically a socialist system of healthcare. It's run on the classic Marxist principle that everybody pays into it and then you draw on it as you need. And of course that's a wonderful sounding idea, as Marxist ideas are. Everybody likes the idea that you get treated regardless of whether you're rich or poor. Nobody looks at your wallet. Nobody cares whether you're insured. It's a fantastic thing in theory. In practice, it has led to some of the worst healthcare outcomes in any industrialized country. This is the last place you'd want to have cancer. It's the last place you'd want to have heart failure, because the system is bad for patients and bad for doctors. It disincentivizes innovation. It disincentivizes medical practice. We have fewer doctors than anybody else because they don't really have the capacity to profit from their energies. And most terrifyingly of all, you have state bureaucracies decreeing what drugs you can buy, what ones you can't, what you're eligible for, taking literally life and death decisions in a way that is kind of Aldous Huxley almost. It's amazing in a 21st century free society that decisions like that are made for you by the government. So, the US is our strongest ally and our best friend, and it would be wrong for me if I see a friend on the cusp of making a mistake not to warn him. If you take anything from what I'm saying now, if you forget everything I've said, please do not copy the British healthcare model.
Let's go back to the caller in Louisiana. Your second point?
My second point is, sir, this is on health care too. Obama has already said within the first 2 years he's going to legalize 20 illegal immigrants. When this is done, they're going to be able to bring their families in. This is the Democratic Party now. That's going to be 50 million of them. 3/4 of them are going to be on welfare. And what is this going to do to our hospitalization?
Mr. Hannan.
Well, look, that really is a domestic question for you. I'm not going to talk about whether or not you should be having more or fewer immigrants. All I would say is, you've got an elected Congress. They have a clear mandate, and if you don't like it, you should change the complexion of your Congress so that they will put in policies that you agree with.
Cleveland, Ohio, you're next. Good morning.
Good morning, C-SPAN. And good morning, Mr. Hannan. I saw you on Glenn Beck the other night, and he cut you off, and I apologize for Glenn Beck. I had a question about this.
It was all very friendly.
No, I'm glad to hear that. This $1 trillion that we're hearing about, you're right, people don't really realize how much money that is. My question to you is, how long do you think would actually take taxpayers to pay back $1 trillion? That's assuming that, you're getting the taxpayer money from all over the world.
We're talking about generational debt. We're talking about an epochal debt. The United Kingdom finally paid off the last of its war loans to the US about 5 years ago, right? It hung over 2 generations before we made the final payment and were cleared. And no sooner had we done that, as it turned out, that we then plunged into this new round of borrowing under our existing leader. You take it for granted, but it's a massive, permanent albatross around your neck, dragging you deckward. The last time that we amassed a debt like this in my country, as I say, was when we were fighting for national survival between 1939 and 1945. When we came out of that conflict, our place in the world was changed. It was changed utterly and irretrievably because of the weight of the debt that we had incurred in order to secure the victory. And people in Britain in the 50s and 60s, they would look at the continent, they'd look at the countries that had lost the war, and they would say, how come they're doing so much better than us? These were countries that were ravaged, and their bridges were bombed, and their factories were shelled out. How come they are growing so much faster than we are? And a result of that sense of inferiority is we ended up joining the European Union in the belief that they'd come up with some miracle of steady growth. But of course there was a much simpler explanation, which is that on VE Day, as we came out of the Second World War, we owed about 300% of our GDP in debt. Now, in terms of total percentage, we're not there now. But in terms of the amount of money, we're beyond that. And this is going to hang over our children for generations. As Shakespeare says, your children yet unborn and unbegot.
Time for one last very quick question from Dallas. Good morning. If you could keep it brief, please.
Yes, I'm a first-time caller, so I'm a little bit nervous. Good morning.
Good morning, caller. We don't have a lot of time. Quick question.
Yes. Where do you stand with Mr. Javier Solana?
Mr. Solana, for readers who haven't been, for viewers who aren't following this, is the kind of EU foreign minister. The EU is turning itself into a single country, a single polity, and it is taking on all of the attributes and trappings that we would normally associate with statehood. A passport, a national anthem, external borders, a parliament, a currency, and of course a foreign minister, which is Mr. Solana, as you say. I think it's got to be a bad idea to have somebody making foreign policy decisions like him who is not anchored in any national government, in any elected national parliament, because you guys, your revolution, your country, showed the world this new principle that government should be accountable to the people and that lawmakers should have to go back to the people who are going to be affected by their laws. And that was the greatest idea that humanity has known. It's made us happier and more prosperous and freer, and I'm terrified when I see the European Union going in the opposite direction and centralizing power in plain contempt for the ballot box.
And finally, what kind of reaction has your speech from Brussels received in Great Britain?
From the blogs, from people, from guys you bump into in the street, a lot. We have a state-run broadcaster, and they have more or less declined to cover it at all, which is what happens when you have nationalized television.
Daniel Hannan, who's joining us from London. We hope you'll come back again. Thanks for conversing with our audience. We appreciate your time.
It's been my great pleasure. Thank you very much.